everyone, and welcome to Chapter Book Storytime Variety Pack. My name is Ellen, and I work at the Oakland branch of EVPL. I've got two books to share with you today that I think you'll really like, so why don't we get started? The first one is hilarious. I think it's great. I think it's a really good theme and a lot of fun. It's called The Terrible Two by Jory John and Mac Barnett. And the illustrations are by Kevin Cornell. The illustrations are very important to this book. It gives it kind of a wimpy kid type of feel to it. They're very important to the story, and they make the book even funnier. So this is The Terrible Two, What Happens When a Prankster Meets His Match. The book first starts out by setting the scene. Welcome to 𝑦𝐞𝐬𝐨 Valley, an idyllic place with rolling hills that slope down to creeks and cows as far as the eye can see. There's one now. Some facts about 𝑦𝐞𝐬𝐨 Valley. If you placed all of 𝑦𝐞𝐬𝐨 Valley's cows in a stack, they would extend to the moon and back. But that's probably not a good idea since cows are afraid of heights and cannot breathe in space without helmets. In 1836, due to a balloting error, a cow was elected mayor of 𝑦𝐞𝐬𝐨 Valley. After earning record-high approval ratings, the cow was re-elected to a second term. A statue of that cow still stands in the center of the town square. If you stand next to a cow for a whole day, you will hear that cow moo 100 times or less. Counting moos is a popular pastime in 𝑦𝐞𝐬𝐨 Valley. Moo. That's one. All this makes 𝑦𝐞𝐬𝐨 Valley a very exciting place if you're enthusiastic about cows. Miles Murphy was not enthusiastic about cows. This is Miles Murphy. He's on his way to 𝑦𝐞𝐬𝐨 Valley. Let's take a closer look at his face. Ooh. Notice the scowl. Notice the gloom. Notice the way his face is pressed against the window and he looks like he's trying to escape. Notice the way he keeps sighing. That's 100 sighs today. Miles, please stop sighing, Judy Murphy said from the driver's seat. We're going to have a house now. Your room will be bigger and you'll have a yard. We'll have a fresh start. So a smile would be nice. Miles and his mother are moving to 𝑦𝐞𝐬𝐨 Valley. And Miles is not happy at all. He's going to miss his friends. He's going to be missing his favorite candy store. He's going to be missing his old room that have maps plastered all over the walls. But what Miles was going to miss most of all was his reputation at his old school as the best prankster that school had ever seen. What will his new role be at his new school? He worries about that the whole night before the first day of school at 𝑦𝐞𝐬𝐨 Valley. And that morning, he's filled with a sense of dread. Miles awoke with a sense of dread. See, I told you. He opened his eyes and stared at his blank ceiling. Last night, he dreamed it had all been a dream, and now he wished he were still dreaming. The dread stayed with him on the car ride to 𝑦𝐞𝐬𝐨 Valley Science and Letters Academy. They pulled up to the front of the school. Did you remember everything? Judy asked. Miles checked around him. He had his new backpack, his new lunch bag containing his lunch, his new binder, his new folders, his new jacket, and, most importantly, his old pranking notebook. It was a boring-looking notebook on the outside, of course, so as not to seem so suspicious. But inside, it was a fabulous notebook filled with blueprints and maps and notes and plans for all the best pranks Miles had pulled. The ghost prank. The missing front tooth prank, Operation Soggy Homework. They were all in there, plus others. 2 cats instead of a dog. Fish in a bed. Lemonade without any sugar. Mission pie. Inside was all the great stuff that had made Miles famous. Ketchup that looks like blood. Raisins everywhere. Operation Sandy Shorts. On your first day at a new school in a new town, you got to decide what kind of kid you were going to be. You could be the smart kid or the kid who had cool shoes. You could be the kid who knows everything about old cars or current events or World War I. The kid who always has chapstick. chess kid, basketball kid, student government kid, kid who organizes canned food drives, front row kid, back row kid, kid who always has his hand up even though he doesn't know the answers, kid who's allowed to see R-rated movies, kid who isn't allowed to see R-rated movies but just says he does and just makes up their plots based on the previews, kid whose family doesn't own a TV and just wants to watch your TV. On the first day of school, you could fake a French accent and be the foreign kid. You could bring your teacher a gift and be the kiss-up kid. Expensive school supplies kid, kid who sharpens his pencil 10 times per period. The 2 different socks quirky kid, the kid who wears shorts every day regardless of the weather. Today was the day when you could decide to become a new kid and be that kid for the rest of your life. But Miles didn't want to be any of those kids. He didn't want to be a new kind of kid at all. Miles wanted to be the same kind of kid he was at his old school, the prankster. Miles had been the best prankster his old school had ever seen, and he'd be the best prankster at his new school too. Bye, Mom. He got out of the car and surveyed the 𝐻𝐿𝐴 Valley Science and Letters Academy. It was a squat brick building in the shape of a squat brick. Miles looked around and saw all the typical school stuff. There was the typical marquee. There was the typical flag attached to the typical flagpole. There was the typical gaggle of kids, the typical hedges, the typical trees, the typical school entrance, blocked by somebody's typical car. Wait, that couldn't be right. Miles looked again. Yep, there it is, the entrance to the school, blocked by someone's car. Let's keep going, find out whose it is. He approached the crowd of kids. Miles heard snickers. He heard snorts. He even heard some guffaws. Miles smiled for the first time since leaving his old town. That was a pretty good prank. Then he stopped smiling. That was a very good prank. He frowned. It appeared this school already had a prankster, a very good prankster. Miles Murphy didn't know anything about World War I, and his socks matched. If Miles wasn't the school prankster, he was nobody. Miles Murphy stood on the lawn of 𝐻𝐿𝐴 Valley Science and Letters Academy watching as a man climbed on top of the car. The man cleared his throat and began to speak. Good morning, students. Who did this? Nobody spoke. Somewhere in the distance, a cow mooed. I see. Well, due to unfortunate circumstances this morning, the first morning of what I hope will be 𝐻𝐿𝐴 Valley Science and Letter Academy's best year yet, I will need all students, teachers, and staff to enter the school by first going through my car, being careful to mind the leather interior that I had installed this summer as an early birthday present to myself. My birthday is in 3 weeks, by the way, for anybody who wants to keep track of these things and would like to show their appreciation for their principal. But yes, in any case, as I said, you will be entering school through my car. Remember, I will be watching you, all of you, and I will not rest until I find the culprit. Now, let's have our best year. After Barkin blew his whistle, the students lined up single file to crawl through the principal's car. Principal Barkin watched, wincing and flinching and saying things like, "Those shoes look muddy, Miss Bergner," and "Who tracked in a leaf?" and "I had some pennies. Where did my pennies go?" Here's what Principal Barkin's car looked like when he drove it to school that morning. And here's what Principal Barkin's car looked like when Miles Murphy, the second to the last student to enter the car, finally got inside. As Miles carefully contorted his way through the car, he heard the last student in line, a big kid who looked a lot like a small Principal Barkin, say, "But Dad..." "What is it, Josh?" "Why didn't you just have us all go through the back entrance?" Then Josh muttered under his breath, but Miles still heard, "You nimbus?" It was true. The school did have a back entrance, and Barkin had walked through it this morning. But Principal Barkin stared off at a field of cows in the distance. None of them moved. There was chaos in the halls. "Was it you?" Principal Barkin stuck a finger in Miles's face. "Huh?" Miles said. This was always a good thing to say when you might be in trouble. "You. This is my school, and I've never seen you before. Why are you here?" "I'm the new kid," said Miles. Principal Barkin became slightly less purple. "And what's your name, new kid?" "Miles." "Well, I don't like that at all," said Principal Barkin. "We already have a Niles here at this school." "My name is Miles." "Well, that's better, but still a little confusing. Maybe you could go by Tony or Chuck." "I'd rather go by my own name, Miles," said Miles. "Well, you've got a little mouth on you, don't you? Which brings me back to my first question. Was it you?" "Was it me what?" "Was it you who moved my car to the top of the stairs?" "No, sir. I don't even have a driver's license." "And that's why you shouldn't have been driving my car, as well as many other reasons." "But I didn't drive it," said Miles. "Well, then how did you get it to the top of the stairs?" said Barkin. And how do I get it back down?" "I don't know, sir." Principal Barkin squinted. "Well, Miles, I'll have my eye on you. In fact, I'll have both my eyes on you. But in the meantime, welcome to Yawny Valley Science and Letters Academy." Miles wondered if he could go to class now, but Principal Barkin didn't move out of the way. "Now, one last piece of business. All our new students get paired up with a buddy. Someone who knows the lay of the land, the school rules, what to do, what not to do, including moving my car. Since you are our only new student this year, you're lucky enough to have been assigned our best student. Niles?" A small blonde boy wearing a sash that said "School Helper" ran over to the principal. "Miles, this is Niles Sparks," Principal Barkin informed him. "Niles is the student who first told me about my car. Miles is the student who I suspect moved it." Niles held out his hand, his elbow flexed just slightly, his eye contact with Miles uninterrupted by blinks. He was the kind of kid who practiced his handshake alone in his room. There was a Niles at every school. The kiss-up, the do-gooder, the school snitch. And now Miles was supposed to shake his hand? "Sorry, I've got a cold," Miles said. Niles lowered his arm. Somewhere in the distance, a cow mooed. "Niles," Principal Barkin said, "take Miles to room 22. Ms. Shandy is waiting." Niles takes his job as school buddy very seriously and follows Miles around all day. Miles doesn't want a do-gooder and a snitch with him all the time, especially if he's going to assert himself as a new prankster in the school. But Niles just keeps following him, and he even calls him at home that night. "Hi, Miles," said Niles. "It's me, Niles, your school buddy. From school? The one with the sash. We sat next to each other all day today." "Yeah, and then you followed me home," said Miles. "Well, technically I was walking you home, except you were running, and I can't run very fast because of my allergies." "Okay," said Miles. "Why are you calling?" "As your buddy, I'm required to call you for a first day check-in, which takes the form of a brief 5-question survey." "They make you call with a survey?" "Yes," said Niles. "Well, technically I created the rules for the school buddy program, so I make me call with a survey, but it should be quick and fun. You should be done before dinner." "Bye, Niles." "Tell your mother I said bye," said Niles. Miles hung up the phone. For the 67th time that day, Miles wished he'd parked the car at the top of the stairs. And for the 73rd time, he wondered who did. If he didn't establish himself as this school's best prankster, Niles might end up actually being his real buddy. Miles had to do something. Something big. Something huge. "May I be excused?" he asked. Miles didn't even wait for an answer. He went right up to his room, pulled out his pranking notebook and wrote, "The birthday party prank." This prank is going to be epic. He's going to invite the whole town to a birthday party for a famous celebrity, and they're all going to be coming with fabulous gifts, fabulous birthday presents for this celebrity. But the celebrity's not going to show. But on the day of the prank, everything backfires. And Miles is left wondering, what happened? Who spoiled the prank? Then he finds a rubber chicken. And on the chicken, there's a message. "You can't trick a trickster. Meet me in Sherman's pasture, Sunday sunset. Come alone." When he gets to Sherman's pasture, he meets the prankster, the one who put the principal's car on the steps, the one who made his birthday party prank backfire. And you'll never guess who it is. He suggests they join forces, make a team called the Terrible Two, the best pranking team that school has ever seen. But Miles says, "No thanks." And the prankster says, "You know, this means war." And so the prank war is on. Will the school be standing at the end of the book when the war is over? To find out, read The Terrible Two by Jory John and Mac Barnett, with wonderful illustrations by Kevin Cornell. This book is available as an ebook and an e-audiobook through our apps, Libby and Hoopla, and we also have print copies available at many EVPL branches. All you need is your EVPL library card. I'm really excited about our second novel today because it's by a well-known author, and I love her books, and I'm glad she's written another one. The book is called The Beatrice Prophecy by Kate DiCamillo. Kate DiCamillo has written books such as Flora and Ulysses, A Tale of Despero, Because of Winn-Dixie. She's written some smaller chapter books for younger readers, such as Bink and Golly, and also Mercy Watson, the Mercy Watson series. That is hilarious. It's about a pig who likes buttered toast. It's a great story. The Beatrice Prophecy is a book of fantasy, and it is, as you see from the cover, it has this beautiful kind of ancient feel to it. The illustrations here are by Sophie Blackall, and really add to the atmosphere of the story. This feels like an ancient book, and it is about an ancient prophecy or an ancient foretelling. The Beatrice Prophecy by Kate DiCamillo. It is written in the Chronicles of Sorrowing that one day there will come a child who will unseat a king. The prophecy states that this child will be a girl. Because of this, the prophecy has long been ignored. Book the First. 𝐸𝐴𝑛𝑠wellica was a goat with teeth that were the mirror of her soul, large, sharp, and uncompromising. One of the goat's favorite games was to lull the monks of the Order of the Chronicles of Sorrowing into a sense of complacency by arranging her features in a benign and indifferent expression. For weeks, she would bite no one. When approached, she would merely stare into the distance as if she were considering something profound. And then, when the brothers had relaxed their guard, thinking that perhaps somehow 𝐸𝑛𝑠wellica had changed, the goat would come from behind and butt them in the backside as hard as she was able. She was very strong, and she had a very hard head. Because of this, the goat was able to send the monks flying great distances through the air. When they landed, she bit them. The brothers of the Order of the Chronicles of Sorrowing would have liked to butcher her, but they were afraid of the ghost of 𝐸𝑛𝑠wellica. The monks agreed among themselves that the ghost of the goat would surely be more vicious and determined, more impossible to outwit than the flesh and blood goat. And so she lived, which is just as well, which is in fact wonderful, because without the goat, Beatrice surely would have died. And then where would we be? Chapter 2. All of this took place during a time of war. Sadly, this does not distinguish it from any other time. It was always a time of war. Brother 𝐀𝐥𝐬𝐨 was the one who found her. The world that morning was coated in a layer of frost, and the brother was late for the task of feeding 𝑎𝑛𝑠wellika because he had stood for too long, admiring the light of the rising sun shining on the blades of grass and the branches of the trees. The whole world seemed lit from within. Surely it is evidence of something, Brother 𝐀𝐥𝐬𝐨 said aloud. Surely such beauty means something. He stood and looked at the world until the cold made his hands ache, and he came at last to his senses. He trembled as he entered the barn, certain that 𝑎𝑛𝑠wellika, displeased at his lateness, was already plotting against him. But he was surprised to find the goat asleep, her legs folded beneath her, her back to him. What new ploy was this? Brother 𝐀𝐥𝐬𝐨 cleared his throat. He put down the bucket. Still the goat did not move. He stepped closer. He gasped. His mind was playing tricks on him. Or rather, it was his eye playing tricks. His left eye, which would not stay quiet and still, but rolled around in his head, looking for something it had yet to find. Some demon occupies that eye, Brother 𝐀𝐥𝐬𝐴's father had said to him, and that demon has made its way into your mind as well. And now, in the early morning gloom of the barn, Brother 𝐀𝐥𝐬𝐴's wandering eye, his strange mind, was seeing a goat with 2 heads. Have mercy on us, whispered Brother 𝐀𝐥𝐬𝐴. 𝑎𝑛𝑠wellika with 1 head was merely more than the brothers could bear. How could they live with a goat if she had 2 heads and 2 sets of teeth? The brother took a tentative step forward. He squinted and saw that the other head belonged to a child, curled up beside the goat. Brother 𝐀𝐥𝐬𝐴 let out a sigh of relief. And then a new wave of terror engulfed him when he realized that the child had hold of one of the goat's ears. A child next to the goat. A child curled up and holding on to the demon 𝑎𝑛𝑠wellika. Brother 𝐀𝐥𝐬𝐴's heart thumped with dread. The goat's terrible teeth flashed through his mind. He knew those teeth more intimately than he would wish. Here, he said now. He took a step closer to the goat. We must be very careful. The goat ignored him. The small form nestled up against the goat did not stir. Brother 𝐀𝐥𝐬𝐴 saw that the child's feet were bare and covered in blood. He shivered. Should he go and get help? You coward, he heard his father say. You broken-eyed coward. And it was true. He was a coward. But still, he could not walk away and leave this child alone with 𝑎𝑛𝑠wellika. He would have to confront the goat. You goat-fearing fool, he heard his father say. Brother 𝐀𝐥𝐬𝐴 sighed. He wished his father's voice would leave him alone. He wished it could be silenced once and for all. Brother 𝐀𝐥𝐬𝐴 gathered his robe and made to climb over the gate and into the goat's domain. 𝑎𝑛𝑠wellika stood up. She emitted a high-pitched noise. The child sat up, and Brother 𝐀𝐥𝐬𝐴 saw long hair, astonished eyes, and a face shaped like a heart. A girl child. She was crying. It was not outraged crying or sorrowful crying. It was the crying of someone who was tired beyond all reckoning, the crying of someone who was trying very hard not to cry. Tears rolled down her face as she looked into his eyes, both of them, his steady eye and his wild and wandering eye, and did not look away. Brother 𝐀𝐥𝐬𝐴 looked back at her. He felt his heart shift inside of him. He felt it open. Oh, said Brother 𝐀𝐥𝐬𝐴. 𝑎𝑛𝑠wellika let out another high-pitched noise. Shh, said Brother 𝐀𝐥𝐬𝐴 to the goat and the girl. Shh, all will be well. All will be well. And yet, even as Brother 𝐀𝐥𝐬𝐴 spoke those words, other words, more ominous words, were being spoken not far away. In the drafty throne room of the king's castle, a soldier bowed before the king and said, Sire, the woman is secured in the dungeon as you commanded, but I must tell you that the child is missing. I have searched all of the castle Abelard and its environs. I could not find her. What do you mean you could not find her? Said the king. I mean, sire, that she is not there. Her body was not there. The girl is gone. 𝑎𝑛𝑠wellika stood next to the child in a ferocious, protective pose. Brother 𝐀𝐥𝐬𝐨 had one leg swung over the gate and one leg still on the ground. "Please," he said to the goat. "Let me in," said Brother 𝐀𝐥𝐬𝐴 to the goat. He spoke softly. "You must let me tend to her." 𝐴𝑛SWELIKA took one step back. For what was surely the first time in her life, she retreated. Brother 𝐀𝐥𝐬𝐴 swung his leg over the gate. He stepped into the goat's enclosure. "Are you injured?" he asked the child. She was young, not more than 10 years old, although it was impossible to tell for certain, dirt and blood encrusted as she was. The girl did not answer him. "What is your name?" Tears continued to roll down her cheeks, clearing a path through the dirt. Brother 𝐀𝐥𝐬𝐴 took a step toward her, and 𝐴𝑛SWELIKA growled. You would not think a goat could growl, but this goat was forever full of surprises. "I'm going to carry you," Brother 𝐀𝐥𝐬𝐴 said, and then he announced his intentions to the goat. "I'm going to carry her." The child let go of 𝐴𝑛SWELIKA's ear. Brother 𝐀𝐥𝐬𝐴 bent and gathered her in her arms. Her skin was hot to the touch. She was burning with fever. "She's very sick," Brother 𝐀𝐥𝐬𝐴 said to the goat, who was staring up at him. "The first thing we must attempt to do is bring the fever down, and we must wash her. We must remove the dirt and the blood. She has come from some war, I suppose. Do you not think it so?" 𝐴𝑛SWELIKA nodded. "Lord help me," thought Brother 𝐀𝐥𝐬𝐴. "I'm conferring with a goat." He walked out of the barn into the light of day, carrying the child. 𝐴𝑛SWELIKA was at his heels. He turned and looked back at her. He saw that the goat's eyes were gentle, full of concern. Strange world. Impossible world. 𝐴𝑛SWELIKA butted her head against his legs. It was not a warning, but a request. "Go faster. Please hurry. Tend to this child." Oh, this strange world. The sun was warm on Brother 𝐀𝐥𝐬𝐴's face. This impossible world. What she saw when she awoke was sunlight streaming through one small window that was up very high. She was in a narrow room on a mattress of straw. A goat was beside her, and outside the window there was a bird calling, singing 2 high sweet notes over and over again. She lay and listened to the bird sing. She allowed herself to think that the bird was searching for her, singing her name. "Beatrice, Beatrice, Beatrice." "Listen," she said to the goat. "The bird sings my name. Beatrice is my name, and the bird sings it. Does it not?" The goat stared at her from golden, light-filled eyes. "Beatrice," said Beatrice. "I am Beatrice." The goat nodded. Beatrice sat up. The sun streaming in through the small window outlined the hair on the goat's ears. The bird sang. Beatrice wondered if she was dreaming. If so, it was a pleasant dream. She put her hand on the goat's head. It was knobby and solid and warm. It seemed real enough. She grabbed hold of one of the goat's ears. She gave it a tug just as the door to the room opened. A monk entered. "Oh," he said. He stood unmoving and stared at her. Or rather, his right eye stared at her, and his left eye wandered of its own accord, looking around the room, at the goat, at Beatrice, at the sunlight, and the window. "Your left eye does what it will," said Beatrice. "It dances in your head." The monk raised his left hand and covered the roving eye. "No, no, no," she said. "I did not mean you should hide it." She smiled back at him. He smiled back, and he removed his hand. "I am Brother 𝐀𝐥𝐬𝐴," he said. "And the goat," she said. "What is the goat's name?" "She is called 𝐴𝑛SWELIKA." "𝐴𝑛SWELIKA," said Beatrice. It is not at all the name I expected." Brother 𝐀𝐥𝐬𝐴 smiled at her. She liked his face. She liked his wandering, searching eye. She liked his steady, quiet eye, too. "You have been very sick," he said to her. "𝐴𝑛SWELIKA stayed with you all the while." "Yes," she said. She remembered the fever, the heat, and the despair of it. "Where is this? Where am I now?" "You are with the brothers of the Order of the Chronicles of Sorrowing." "And what are the Chronicles of Sorrowing?" asked Beatrice. "The Chronicles tell the story of what has happened and of the things that might yet happen, and those things which have been prophesied." "Sorrowing," said Beatrice. The word was a heavy one. "It does not sound like a happy book, a joyful book." Alas, said Brother 𝐀𝐥𝐬𝐸, it is not. Well then, said Beatrice, that is not a book I would care to read. Brother 𝐀𝐥𝐬𝐸 stared at her. You would not care to read it? He said. His wild eye danced. His other eye remained steady on her face, serious, concerned. And some small bell of warning, some bass note of doom echoed within Beatrice. Who are your people? Brother 𝐀𝐥𝐬𝐸 asked. They will want to know that you are alive. They will want you home. And here, whatever brightness Beatrice had felt disappeared. Who were her people? Where was her home? She could not say. A great black emptiness suddenly yawned inside of her. It was as if she had been walking down a path and turned to look behind her and found that all the things that should have been there, all the things that had been there only a moment ago, the trees, the bushes, the birds, the path itself, had suddenly disappeared. I'm Beatrice, she said to Brother 𝐀𝐥𝐬𝐸. Beatrice. It was all she could think to say, all that she knew. She started to cry. And in the castle of the king, in the throne room, the counselor reassured the king. This is nothing but a small delay, sire, said the counselor. It is quite a worrisome thing, said the king. I have been thinking, what if we have mistaken the prophecy as it was written? What if we have the wrong child? Mistaken, sire? I would remind you that if we had mistaken the prophecy as it was written, if we had misunderstood those great words of wisdom, you would now not be upon the throne. True, true, said the king. We do not have the wrong child. She is one of whom the prophecies speak. I am certain of it. I would not, though, have her killed, said the king. I want her brought to me alive. Yes, alive, so that I may question her. The counselor rubbed his eyes, and he sighed. Very well, he said. You are king. We will do as you command. We will instruct that she be brought back alive. Brother 𝐀𝐥𝐬𝐸's problems were compounded. There was a child who was no longer hot with fever, but who did not know who she was or where she belonged. There was a goat who continued to refuse to be separated from the girl. And worst of all, the girl, when discussing the Chronicles of Sorrowing, had said, that is not a book I would care to read. That is not a book I would care to read. As if she could read. As if such a thing were possible, which of course it was not. But still a shiver of wonder and fear went through him at the possibility of a girl who could read. Only brothers in service to God could read, and also the tutors and scholars who came and studied the prophecies, and counselors to the king, and the king himself. In the whole of the world, from the great sea that Brother 𝐀𝐥𝐬𝐸 had never laid his eyes on, but knew existed, to the dark mountains that Brother 𝐀𝐥𝐬𝐸 had heard described, there was only a handful of people who could read. All of them were male. None of them were female. It was against the law to teach a girl to read, a woman to write. And so Brother 𝐀𝐥𝐬𝐸 gives Beatrice a test. He writes the letter B, and she reads it and says, that is the letter B. My name, Beatrice, starts with B. And so she can read. A little later, Brother 𝐀𝐥𝐬𝐸, he remembers the prophecy of the child who will dethrone the king, a girl child, and he wonders, as possibly you also have wondered, is this the girl of the prophecy? Is that why the king is looking for her? The king's soldiers are searching high and low, and soon they will come to the monastery and search for Beatrice. And Brother 𝐀𝐥𝐬𝐸, with the help of 𝐸𝐸 and a village boy, will help her flee. But where does she want to go? She wants to go to the king, straight to the king, the one who wants to capture her. This is the story of the Beatrix Prophecy by Kate DiCamillo, another fantastical story. Well, that's another edition of Chapter Book Storytime Variety Pack. I hope you enjoyed the stories we read today. We read from the book The Terrible Two by Jory John and Mac Barnett, and The Beatrice Prophecy by Kate DiCamillo. Two great stories available in digital and print copies at EVPL. Thanks for joining me today. Miss Jessica will be back next week. Bye-bye.